You know what the worst feeling in the world is? It's not failure, it's not rejection, it's not even heartbreak. The worst feeling in the world is lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, and knowing deep in your gut that you're capable of so much more than what you're doing right now. That feeling of knowing you're settling, that feeling of knowing you're playing small, that feeling of knowing there's a version of you out there, a stronger, bolder, more fearless version, and you're just not becoming that person. You're choosing comfort over courage. You're choosing safe over spectacular. You're choosing the weak version of yourself over the warrior you were born to be. And here's the thing nobody wants to hear, that weak version. It's not going anywhere unless you decide to crush it, not gently nudge it aside, not politely ask it to leave. Crush it, destroy it, burn it to the ground and rise from those ashes as someone unrecognizable to the person you were yesterday. I want to talk to you today about something that changed my entire life. Something that took me from a girl in a small town with big dreams that everyone said were impossible, to standing on stages around the world, to working in industries that told me I didn't belong, to building a life that once existed only in my wildest imagination. And that something is this: the decision to stop being comfortable with mediocrity. The decision to wage war against every excuse, every fear, every limiting belief that kept me small. The decision to crush the weak version of myself every single day. Because let me tell you something, that weak version is persuasive. She's got all the best arguments. She sounds so reasonable. She says things like, maybe tomorrow. She says, you're tired, you deserve rest. She says, who do you think you are to want something this big? She says, remember last time you tried and failed. Let's not go through that again. She says, other people have advantages you don't have. She says, it's too late. She says, you're too old, too young, too inexperienced, too different. That voice, it's a liar. It's the voice of every dream you'll never chase. It's the voice of every opportunity you'll never take. It's the voice of a life half lived, a potential half realized, a story that ends with, I wonder what would have happened if. I grew up in a middle-class family in India. My parents were doctors, and while we were comfortable, we weren't connected to Bollywood. We didn't have relatives in the film industry. We didn't have a pathway paved for us. When I won Miss World at 17, I thought the universe had handed me a golden ticket. I thought doors would just open. And yes, some doors opened, but they opened to rooms full of people who looked at me and said, you're not quite right for this. My nose was too big. My accent was too Indian. I wasn't the conventional beauty. I wasn't from a film family. I was an outsider trying to break into a world with very tall, very thick walls. The weak version of me wanted to go back home. She wanted to say, well, at least I tried. She wanted to accept that maybe this wasn't meant for me. She had a million reasons why giving up made sense. But there was another voice, quieter at first, but growing stronger every day. A voice that said, you didn't come this far to only come this far. A voice that said, they don't get to decide your worth. A voice that said, everything you want is on the other side of these obstacles. So I made a choice. Every single day I made the choice to show up. When they said my nose was too big, I showed up. When they said my accent wasn't right, I worked with a coach for hours and hours and showed up. When I didn't get callbacks, I showed up. When the films didn't work, I showed up. When people wrote me off, I showed up. Because showing up, even when every fiber of your being wants to hide, even when you feel inadequate, even when you're terrified, that's how you crush the weak version of yourself. And here's what nobody tells you about crushing that weak version. It's not a one-time thing. You don't just wake up one day and decide to be strong and then you're strong forever. No, it's a daily practice. It's a moment-by-moment choice. It's choosing the hard conversation over silence. It's choosing the workout over the snooze button. It's choosing to send the email even though you're afraid of rejection. It's choosing to start the business even though you might fail. It's choosing to be vulnerable even though you might get hurt. It's choosing growth over comfort again and again and again until the strong version of you becomes your default setting. I remember when I got my first opportunity to work in American television, I was terrified. I was entering an industry where I was even more of an outsider than I was in Bollywood. I was brown in an industry that barely had representation. I had an accent that I'd been told to change. I had imposter syndrome screaming so loud in my head that I could barely hear anything else. The weak version of me said, "What if you're not good enough? What if they realize you don't belong here? What if you fail on an international stage and everyone back home sees it?" But I had learned something by then. I had learned that the weak version of yourself will always have an opinion. She will always try to protect you from discomfort, from potential failure, from risk. But protection and growth cannot coexist. You cannot be both comfortable and growing. You cannot be both safe and extraordinary. You have to choose. So I chose. I chose to walk onto that set scared but committed. I chose to do the work, to prepare obsessively, to give everything I had. And yes, there were moments when I wanted to run. There were moments when I felt out of place. There were moments when I questioned everything. But I kept choosing the strong version of myself over and over. And slowly, something shifted. Not just externally, yes, the show was successful. But internally, I started to realize that I belonged anywhere I decided I belonged. That my worth wasn't determined by other people's limited imagination. That my accent, my background, my differences weren't weaknesses. They were my superpowers. You want to know the secret to crushing the weak version of yourself? It starts with getting brutally honest about who you're being right now versus who you're capable of being. It starts with looking in the mirror and asking yourself the hard questions. Are you giving your best or just enough to get by? Are you pursuing what you actually want or what feels safe? Are you speaking up or staying silent? Are you taking risks or playing it safe? Are you showing up as the person you admire or the person you've settled for being? And I'm not talking about comparison here. I'm not talking about looking at someone else's life and trying to become them. I'm talking about the gap between your current self and your highest self. The version of you that exists in your most inspired moments. The version of you that knows exactly what you're capable of. The version of you that's been waiting patiently for you to stop making excuses and start making moves. I'll tell you something that changed my perspective entirely. When I moved to America, I realized something profound. In India, I was always trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for me. In America, I was just as much of an outsider, but this time I decided not to try to fit in. I decided to stand out. I decided that being different was my advantage, not my disadvantage. And that decision, that shift in perspective, that changed everything. See, the weak version of yourself wants to fit in. She wants approval. She wants everyone to like her. She wants to color inside the lines. She's risk averse. She's afraid of judgment. She's worried about what people will think. The strong version of you, she knows that extraordinary things never came from ordinary approaches. She knows that if you want different results, you need to do things differently. She knows that the people who changed the world weren't the ones who played it safe. They were the ones who were willing to look foolish, to be misunderstood, to stand alone if necessary. Let me share something with you. I've failed more times than I've succeeded. For every film that worked, there were films that didn't. For every opportunity that came through, there were dozens that fell apart. For every moment of success, there were months of struggle. But here's what I learned. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of success. Every failure taught me something. Every rejection redirected me. Every setback set me up for a comeback. The weak version of you sees failure as a sign to stop. The strong version sees it as information, as feedback, as a stepping stone, as proof that you're trying, that you're taking risks, that you're in the arena. You know who never fails? People who never try. People who play it so safe that they never put themselves in a position to fail. And you know what? Those people never win either. They never experience the thrill of achieving something they once thought was impossible. They never know what they're truly capable of. I want you to think about something right now. Think about the dreams you've buried, the ones you used to talk about when you were younger, the ones that made your eyes light up, the ones that felt so big and so exciting that they scared you. What happened to those dreams? Did life get in the way? Did people tell you to be more realistic? Did fear convince you that wanting those things was naive? Here's what I need you to understand. Those dreams didn't go away because they weren't meant for you. They went away because the weak version of yourself convinced you that you couldn't have them. That voice that says, be realistic, is just fear wearing a disguise. Because realistic according to whom? According to people who gave up on their dreams. According to a society that values security over fulfillment, according to a world that would rather you stay small and manageable than big and disruptive. When I decided to pursue Hollywood while maintaining my career in Bollywood, people thought I was crazy. They said you can't do both. They said pick one. They said you're spreading yourself too thin. They said you'll fail at both trying to do everything. The weak version of me was tempted to listen. She said, maybe they're right. Maybe I should just be grateful for what I have. Maybe wanting more is greedy. But the strong version said something different. She said, why not both? Who made these rules? Who said I have to choose? And so I didn't choose. I went after both. Was it hard? Absolutely. Did I have to work twice as hard as everyone else?
Yes.
Did I have moments where I questioned if I was insane? Every single day. But I also proved to myself that the only limitations I have are the ones I accept. You need to understand something crucial. The world will not give you permission to be great. The world is not waiting to validate your dreams. The world is comfortable with you staying exactly where you are. So if you're waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to want more, to be more, to do more, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to give yourself that permission. You have to become your own biggest believer before anyone else believes in you. I've sat in rooms where I was the only woman, the only person of color, the only one without connections, the only one with an accent. And in those moments, the weak version of me wanted to shrink, wanted to be invisible, wanted to just get through the meeting without drawing attention. But the strong version learned to take up space, to speak up, to share ideas, to be unapologetically myself. Because if I wasn't going to advocate for myself, why would anyone else? And here's what happened. Sometimes people didn't like it. Sometimes I was called aggressive when a man would have been called assertive. Sometimes I was called difficult when I was just asking for what I deserved. Sometimes I made people uncomfortable. But I realized that making people uncomfortable wasn't a bug. It was a feature. Change always makes people uncomfortable. Growth always makes people uncomfortable. Excellence always makes people uncomfortable because it holds up a mirror to their own mediocrity. So I stopped apologizing for wanting more, for being ambitious, for taking up space, for having standards, for refusing to settle. And the moment I stopped apologizing for being too much, I attracted people who celebrated that about me instead of trying to dim it. The weak version of yourself apologizes for existing. She makes herself smaller so others feel bigger. She dims her light so others don't feel overshadowed. She downplays her achievements so others don't feel inadequate. The strong version of you, she shines without apology. She lifts herself up and brings others with her. She knows that her success doesn't take away from anyone else's. There's enough light for everyone. I want to talk about fear for a moment because fear is the weapon the weak version of yourself uses most effectively. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of being seen, fear of not being enough. Fear disguises itself as practicality, as logic, as wisdom. It says, I'm just being realistic, when what it really means is I'm too scared to try. I've been afraid more times than I can count. I was afraid when I first walked onto a film set. I was afraid when I moved to America. I was afraid when I started my production company. I was afraid when I wrote my book. I was afraid when I spoke about issues I believed in, knowing I'd face criticism. Fear didn't go away with success. If anything, the stakes got higher, so the fear got bigger. But here's what I learned. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Courage is acknowledging that you're terrified and taking the step regardless. Courage is understanding that on the other side of fear is everything you've ever wanted. Every single thing I'm proud of in my life exists because at some point I felt afraid and did it anyway. Not because I stopped being afraid. Not because I suddenly became brave, but because I realized that the cost of staying the same was higher than the cost of change. The pain of regret is greater than the pain of discipline. The ache of what if is worse than the sting of least I tried. So I started using fear as a compass. If something scared me, if it made my heart race and my palms sweat, if it made that weak version of me scream, don't do it. That's exactly what I needed to do. Because growth lives on the other side of fear. Your next level lives on the other side of fear. The life you dream about lives on the other side of fear. The weak version of you runs from discomfort. The strong version runs toward it. Because she understands that discomfort is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's your trainer. It's the fire that forges steel. You don't become strong by lifting easy weights. You become strong by challenging yourself, by pushing past what you thought was possible, by doing the thing that scares you. I remember reading something once that said, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And it's so true. Think about every major period of growth in your life. Was it comfortable? No. Was it easy? Absolutely not. Was it worth it? Every single time when I was filming Quantico, I was working 18-hour days. I was flying back and forth between continents for other commitments. I was exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally. The weak version of me said, you can't keep doing this. Something has to give. You're going to burn out. And yes, it was hard. Yes, there were moments I cried from exhaustion. Yes, there were moments I questioned if it was worth it. But the strong version of me said something different. She said, you're being tested. This is where most people quit. This is where most people decide it's too hard. But you're not most people. This is where you prove what you're made of. This is where you show yourself what you're capable of. And so I kept going. I found reserves of strength I didn't know I had. I learned to manage my energy better. I learned to ask for help. I learned to prioritize. I learned that I was capable of so much more than I thought. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you push through a barrier you thought was your limit, once you achieve something you thought was impossible, your entire world expands. Suddenly, things that seemed out of reach feel achievable. Dreams that felt too big feel possible. That version of you that you thought you could never become, she starts to feel accessible. But it starts with that first decision. That decision to stop listening to the weak version of yourself. That decision to stop making excuses. That decision to stop waiting for the perfect moment, perfect conditions, the perfect circumstances. Because perfect doesn't exist. There will never be a perfect time. There will always be reasons not to start. There will always be obstacles. There will always be people who doubt you. There will always be unknowns. The difference between people who achieve extraordinary things and people who don't isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't connections. It's the willingness to start before you're ready. It's the willingness to figure it out as you go. It's the willingness to be bad at something before you're good at it. It's the willingness to be uncomfortable, to be uncertain, to be afraid, and do it anyway. I wasn't the most talented actress when I started. I wasn't the most beautiful. I wasn't the most connected, but I was willing to work harder than anyone else. I was willing to show up every single day. I was willing to take the criticism and use it to improve. I was willing to fail and get back up. I was willing to bet on myself when no one else would, and that's what I need you to do. Bet on yourself, not someday, not when you're ready, not when you have more experience or more resources or more confidence. Now, today, this moment, because the truth is you're never going to feel completely ready. You're never going to feel like you have it all figured out. You're never going to feel like the perfect version of yourself. But you don't need to be perfect to start. You just need to be willing. The weak version of you wants guarantees. She wants to know it's going to work out before she tries. She wants a roadmap with every step clearly marked. She wants certainty in an uncertain world. The strong version of you understands that nothing worth having comes with guarantees, that the most rewarding journeys are the ones where you forge your own path. That certainty is the enemy of growth, because if you're certain, you're not stretching yourself. I built my production company without knowing if it would succeed. I invested in projects without knowing if they'd work. I spoke about causes without knowing if I'd face backlash. I made choices without knowing the outcome. And yes, Sometimes things didn't work out. Sometimes I invested time and energy and money into things that failed. Sometimes I took stands that cost me opportunities. But I also created things I'm incredibly proud of. I also made an impact that I never would have made playing it safe. I also became a person I respect when I look in the mirror. And that's what this is really about. It's not about impressing other people. It's not about proving something to the world. It's about becoming someone you're proud to be. It's about looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing you gave it everything. It's about going to bed at night with no regrets because you showed up as the strongest version of yourself. It's about living a life that's aligned with your values, your dreams, your potential. The weak version of you lives for external validation. She needs applause, recognition, approval. She's devastated by criticism. She's defined by other people's opinions. The strong version of you has internal validation. She knows her worth isn't dependent on what others think. She's motivated by her own standards. She's driven by her own vision. She's unbothered by people who don't understand her because she's not living for their understanding. She's living for her fulfillment. I've had people criticize almost every decision I've made. When I worked in Bollywood, people said I was too American. When I worked in Hollywood, people said I was too Indian. When I spoke up about issues, people said I should stick to acting. When I started businesses, people said I was spreading myself too thin. When I got married, people had opinions about that. When I became a mother, people had opinions about that too. And early in my career, those opinions affected me. I wondered if people were right. I wondered if I should just stay in my lane. I wondered if I was doing too much, being too much. But then I realized something: people will always have opinions. They'll have opinions whether you play small or show up big. They'll have opinions whether you follow the rules or break them. They'll have opinions whether you succeed or fail. So if people are going to have opinions anyway, you might as well live the life you want to live. The moment I stopped living for other people's approval, everything changed. I started making decisions based on what felt right for me, not what would make others comfortable. I started pursuing opportunities that excited me, not ones that seemed safe. I started using my voice even when it shook. I started showing up as my full, authentic, unapologetic self. And you know what happened? Some people didn't like it. Some people preferred the version of me that was more accommodating, more agreeable, more small. But I also attracted people who celebrated the real me. I also created work that mattered to me. I also built a life that felt authentic. And that trade, that was worth it every single time. The weak version of you needs everyone to like you. The strong version of you knows that if everyone likes you, you're not being honest. You're not standing for anything. You're not making any waves. You're just reflecting back what people want to see. And that's not living, that's performing. I want you to stop performing. Stop pretending to be less intelligent so others feel smart. Stop hiding your ambition so others feel comfortable. Stop dimming your joy so others don't feel jealous. Stop making yourself smaller so others feel bigger. Stop apologizing for taking up space in a world that told you to shrink. You were not born to be small. You were not born to play it safe. You were not born to live someone else's version of your life. You were born with gifts, with talents, with dreams, with potential that's meant to be realized. And every day you choose the weak version of yourself is a day that potential goes untapped. It's a day that dream goes unchased. It's a day that gift goes unused. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but you don't understand my circumstances. You don't understand my limitations. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. And you're right. I don't know your specific situation. But I know this: everyone has obstacles. Everyone has challenges. Everyone has reasons why it's hard for them. I came from a country where the film industry is incredibly difficult to break into. I had physical features that didn't fit the conventional standard. I had an accent that people said would limit me. I had no connections in Hollywood. I faced racism, sexism, typecasting. I had every reason to say, it's too hard for me. But I also had a choice. We all have a choice. We can focus on our obstacles, or we can focus on our opportunities. We can use our circumstances as excuses or as fuel. I chose fuel. Every rejection became motivation. Every no became determination to prove them wrong. Every obstacle became a challenge to overcome. Every limitation became an opportunity to be creative. And slowly, those obstacles that seemed insurmountable, they became the story of how I got here. They became my strength. They became the reason I can stand here today and tell you that if I can do it, you can do it. Because here's the truth. Your background doesn't determine your future. Your past doesn't define your potential. Your current circumstances don't dictate your destiny. What determines your future is the decision you make right now. The decision to stop accepting less than what you're capable of. The decision to stop letting fear run your life. The decision to stop being comfortable with the weak version of yourself. And crushing that weak version isn't a violent act. It's an act of love. It's loving yourself enough to push yourself. It's loving your dreams enough to chase them. It's loving your potential enough to realize it. It's loving the people who depend on you enough to show them what's possible. It's loving the life you want enough to do the work required to build it. Every morning you wake up and you have a choice. You can hit snooze and choose comfort, or you can get up and choose your goals. You can scroll through social media comparing yourself to others, or you can work on your own vision. You can complain about your circumstances, or you can change them. You can wait for motivation, or you can develop discipline. You can listen to that weak voice, or you can silence it with action. Because here's what I've learned: motivation is fleeting. Inspiration comes and goes. Feelings are unreliable. But discipline is what creates results. Discipline is what builds empires. Discipline is what transforms dreams into reality. The strong version of you doesn't wait to feel like it. She doesn't wait for the perfect mood. She doesn't need motivation. She has a commitment to her future self that's stronger than her current feelings. I've worked out when I didn't feel like it. I've studied scripts when I was exhausted. I've taken meetings when I wanted to stay in bed. I've smiled through pain. I've worked through fear. I've pushed through exhaustion. Not because I'm superhuman, because I'm committed. Because I understand that the quality of my life is determined by the quality of my daily habits. Because I know that every choice I make is either moving me toward my goals or away from them. There is no neutral. Every choice counts. Every moment matters. Every decision is either strengthening the weak version or empowering the strong version. You're either building your dream or you're building someone else's. You're either creating your future or you're accepting your current reality as permanent. You're either growing or you're dying. There's no standing still. So what's it going to be? Are you going to keep playing small? Are you going to keep letting fear make your decisions? Are you going to keep listening to that weak voice that says you can't, you shouldn't, you're not ready? Are you going to keep waiting for perfect conditions that will never come? Are you going to keep making excuses? Are you going to keep settling? Or are you going to decide right now that enough is enough? Are you going to decide that the person you've been is not the person you're becoming? Are you going to decide that your dreams matter more than your fears? Are you going to decide that you'd rather fail trying than succeed at playing small? Are you going to decide that it's time to crush that weak version and become who you were always meant to be? I'm telling you from experience, the moment you make that decision, truly make it, not wish for it, but commit to it, everything changes. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, consistently, powerfully. You start showing up differently. You start speaking differently. You start making different choices. And those choices compound. Small actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. The version of me that stood on that stage for Miss World, she had no idea what she was capable of. The version of me that walked onto her first film set, she was terrified. The version of me that moved to America, she doubted herself constantly. But each version did the thing anyway. Each version chose courage over comfort. Each version crushed the weak thoughts and took the strong action, and that's all you have to do. Not everything at once. Not perfectly. Just the next right thing. The next courageous choice. The next strong decision. String enough of those together and you'll look back one day and barely recognize the person you used to be. You'll see how far you've come. You'll see what you've overcome. You'll see who you've become. But it starts now. not tomorrow. Not after you finish this degree or get that promotion or lose that weight or find that relationship. Now, today, this moment. Because the weak version of you has had enough time. She's had enough chances. She's been in control long enough. It's time for the strong version to take over. It's time for the warrior to wake up. It's time for the dreamer to become the door. It's time for the potential to become reality. You are capable of things you haven't even imagined yet. You have strength you haven't tapped into. You have resilience you haven't tested. You have power you haven't claimed. But none of that matters if you don't use it. None of that matters if you let the weak version keep running the show. So I'm challenging you today. I'm challenging you to make a different choice. I'm challenging you to silence that weak voice. I'm challenging you to take one courageous action today. Not a massive life-changing leap, just one small step in the direction of your dreams. Send that email. Have that conversation. Start that project. Make that call. Take that class. Set that boundary. Whatever it is that the strong version of you knows needs to happen, do it. And tomorrow, do it again. And the next day, do it again. Build momentum. Build confidence. Build evidence that you're not who you used to be. Show yourself what you're capable of. Prove to yourself that you're stronger than your fears, bigger than your doubts, more powerful than your excuses. Because here's what I know for certain: you're going to die someday. We all are. And when you're at the end of your life, looking back, what's going to matter? Is it going to matter that you played it safe? That you made everyone comfortable? That you never failed because you never tried? Or is it going to matter that you went for it? That you bet on yourself? That you pursued your dreams? That you became the person you were capable of being? I know which story I want to tell at the end of my life. I know I want to say I gave it everything. I want to say I didn't let fear win. I want to say I crushed every weak version of myself that tried to hold me back. I want to say I lived fully, loved deeply, dreamed boldly, and showed up courageously. I want to say I became the woman I was meant to be. What do you want to say? What story do you want to tell? What life do you want to live? Who do you want to become? The answers to those questions determine everything. And the actions you take after you leave here, after you finish hearing these words, those actions will determine whether you're living your truth or living your excuses. So here's my final message to you. Stop waiting, stop doubting, stop shrinking, stop settling, stop listening to that weak version. Start believing, start doing, start showing up, start demanding more from yourself. Start living like your dreams matter, because they do. Start acting like your life depends on your choices, because it does. Start crushing the weak version and becoming the warrior. The world doesn't need more people playing small. The world needs you at your strongest. Your family needs you at your best. Your dreams need you fully committed. Your future needs you courageous. Your purpose needs you awake. So wake up, stand up, show up, and become who you were always meant to be. Crush the weak version of yourself and rise as the person you've always known you could become. Your time is now. Your moment is here. Your life is waiting. What are you going to do about it?